connected, streaming live all the way from the mainland. She is a Virgin Islander, but she resides on the mainland, and she has decided to join us as a host this evening. So go ahead, folks, and say
And
hello.
of course, good evening, listening audience. I am M Love. How y'all doing tonight? Hope everybody's having a good Friday.
Good
All
night,
right.
everyone. I'm Shanice here, like you said,
Yeah.
in the mainland.
Let's see. Oh, there we go. Yep. Let's go for it. Hello.
Go ahead and say
Yes.
hello. Yeah, go ahead, Chinese.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shanice over here. As he said, I'm in the mainland.
Well, it's good to have you. Um, we're going to get into some discussions tonight. I want to talk about um, me wrestling with the Creator Most High. Can you imagine that? And I want to talk about some other things, biblical and government-wise. People have said that we should get into the politics. But before we do that, I'm just, can you just play that spiritual trust? We make no claims to that song. It's not ours. It's not proprietary to us. But we're using it as a means of perhaps just getting some inspiration. And so all credit go to the singers, the writers of that song, not to us here on this program. All right, folks, there you have it. So we've gotten that bit of inspiration, so we're going to run along with it. Again, I want to mention that that song is not proprietary to us. It doesn't belong to us. We have no rights to it. We do not claim it. We simply use it. It's out there anyway, in vogue all over the place, and we simply use it as a means of inspiration. All right. Um, so as I was saying, we run into situations where sometimes we contend with higher forces, if I may. And I run into such a situation where I had some challenges and I had to contend with the higher forces. Um, I know there is a story in the Bible of Jacob wrestling with an angel, And I don't know to what extent we should wrestle with the Lord, but I'm certain people do have situations in life where you question what's going on. Am I being abandoned by the Creator Most High? Job in the Bible had his challenges, but he said, "Though he slays me in the dust of the earth, yet will I praise him." And so we got to hold on, notwithstanding the challenges, the difficulties that we have to contend with. We got to hold on. And so I found myself experiencing such a situation. And so I want to just ask you guys a few questions about the Bible, your take on the Bible. Um, Given what you know about the Bible, what you guys have read about the Bible, what's your take? Any one of you? What's your take on the Bible? How does it fit into your perspective of life, your scheme of things? What roles do you think it plays? And some have told us that the Bible stands for basic instructions before leaving earth, which shows an acknowledgement that we do have an appointment with death. We are going to die. And so some say the Bible are the instructions given to us for preparation before we make our exit. Others have said that the Bible is a manual, an instruction manual given to us so that we know how to manage and to operate the human soul, if I may. Well, what's your take on that? Any one of you?
I do feel like it's a manuscript syllabus, and my favorite is the Psalms. That's my daily ritual. I wake up in the morning, I say the Psalms, I do 120, 121, 91, 23, 34, 27,
That's a whole,
51.
that's a whole bunch of them, man.
Yeah, but this is my ritual. Like, I feel like if I slip, I ain't complete my day, I ain't fulfill my day, and I have to end it the same way that I started it. So thank God for the Bible.
Shanice, what's your take?
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not very
Hello, Shanice.
Yeah, she talking more.
Hold on, Shanice. Josh, apparently Shanice isn't coming through. But the other thing I want us to look at whilst we're waiting to get Shanice back flowing here with us, apparently, something is muted. What is
Sorry about that. There
You
we
got it?
go. Yeah, we're better.
Shanice, try it now.
Yes, I was saying that honestly, I'm not really big on the whole, reading the Bible and going to church. I am a very spiritual person, meaning that I do pray and I talk to God daily, almost all day. But I won't say that I'm not going to sit here and say that I just read the Bible, because I don't. But
Mhm.
I do believe that the Bible can help you, because every now and then I will read a scripture and it just seems to be the key or the answer to a question that I was thinking about, or some event that's coming up that I haven't arrived to yet. And it just seems to be the answer.
Well, let me ask you all something. When you look at the present social construct and you look at the emerging trends, the divergent views that we have, do you think that the teachings of the Bible, especially the Ten Commandments, do you find them to be relevant and instructions whereby humanity can benefit today?
I will say yes, because the commandments, they aren't bad things. They're good things. They're telling you how to have morality. They're teaching you the ways that life should go in order for everyone to live in harmony.
I hear that, but so the people who have a different perspective in terms of human behavior, in terms of standards of decency, morality, as you pointed out, um, how do we? Because clearly the commandments that come from the Bible instruct us not to engage in certain behaviors. But then you look at what legislation being passed. Um, we're making allowances for all kinds of diverse practices, if I may. notwithstanding what the Bible says. So, how do we find balance in terms of what the Bible says as opposed to the accommodations being extended to persons who are of opposing beliefs, of different cultural, traditional orientation, if I may, and not just traditional, but in terms of the emerging orientation that we see? How do we strike a balance between the two?
Honestly, there's no balance. That's why there was supposed to be a separation of church and
Mhm,
state,
mhm,
because there's a very thin line that right now is being crossed. In my opinion, people are using Christianity as a scapegoat. They're taking it a little too far. They are trying to be the judge,
mhm,
and
mhm,
that's not our job. That's
mhm,
God's job, and He tells you that
mhm,
I am the Lord thy God.
mhm, mhm,
People are trying to, in America, on our country right now, they are trying to be the God. They are
mhm.
trying to dictate how people should live their lives, what should they do. It's just getting completely out of control. No one is following the rules at this point. And when I say no one, I mean the president of the United States
Oh boy.
Mhm. And
is
we're gonna get into a little of that because I want to touch upon government, what government means to us. I want to touch upon the electoral system that we have. What's it like? What's our perception of it? I want to get into that, but you hit on some critical points of observation there. Mandy, let me hear you. Yeah, any reactions?
I feel basically along the same lines of what Chan says.
All right. So then now here is where that comes in. You talk about the separation of church and state. You talk about people not having to use Christianity as a means of scapegoating. And I think it all has to do with being judgmental, wanting to judge, not necessarily saying that we should not evaluate, but we can evaluate without judging, if I may. I don't know if you guys see where I'm coming from. In other words, I may make a determination in terms of what I see people engaging in as far as behavior is concerned, that I personally do not approve of that, but that doesn't give me authority to judge them, if I may. That's not for me to do. Let judgment be reserved for someone else. Um, how do you all feel about it? To be
I,
blunt, to be
to
blunt.
be yes, to be blunt, it's human nature to judge. You can't help yourself to judge. And who gets to decide that we're going to choose one person to make all the decisions so that everyone doesn't isn't biased? Like, how do we do that? How do we come across someone who is not biased, who won't choose sides based on their personal beliefs, based on their morality? It's just, I don't know. That's a difficult question.
So then let me ask you all something. When we run into a situation where persons have made a determination that they don't fit into a particular mode, for example, transgender issues, where a person feels that he or she is living contrary to inner feelings, that they've been designated male, but they feel more like female and want to live life as a female, or even in terms of sexual preferences, sexual orientation, which goes further, where a person says, well, I choose to be bisexual or homosexual. What is the best approach in dealing with that? How can we maintain respectability in dealing with each other? How can we interact in an honorable, peaceful manner with others without shaming them, casting shade, and yet not being part of their circle of orientation, if I may?
All right, going back to the Bible, nothing is new. It happened then and it's happening now. Um, the way that we can, I don't know personally the way that we can handle that because that's a very tough thing. The way I look at it in my life is I mind my business.
And that's key. You mind your business. You're probably your
Yes,
own canoe,
yes.
and that's where we speak about, yes, we have to judge. And that notice I try to refrain from judging anyone.
Mhm.
I make my personal determination. I examine facts. I examine circumstances. I examine tradition and trends. And I try to make a determination in terms of what I accept within my circle of orientation and what I refuse to accept. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to rebuff anybody. You know, if I run into somebody who is of a different sexual preference and orientation than what I have espoused, I will draw a line. I will let that person know, well, I'm not into that. In a respectful manner, if I may, I'll tell the person I'm not given to that. But I would not castigate or judge the individual for the lifestyle that that person has chosen. And I think that's the best approach that we can have. I'm gonna, we run into situations. I don't even know if I should share that publicly, but I will. I caught a ride one night, going from one town to the next, right here on this island. And the individual I caught a ride with was somebody who belonged to, well, actually, a police officer, if I may. And there were other individuals who also caught a ride with that individual. He dropped off persons in an area called Monbiju, for those who are not familiar, but those who are familiar. He dropped off some guys in the Monbiju area, and as he began driving west with me, um, he asked me, I forget exactly how, he asked me if I had a girlfriend. I said, yes, I do have a girlfriend. And I said to him, what about you? Do you have a girlfriend? And he said, no, I dig on guys like you. And he reached his hand across and touched my thigh. And I maintained my calm and I said to him, well, that's fine. You dig on guys, but I dig on girls. And then he straightforward asked me, how about, getting into an entanglement? And I said to him, but I'm just meeting you for the first time. I don't even know you. You know, I think before I get into any kind of an entanglement with you, I should get to know you better. Maybe we can arrange to meet sometime where we can have lunch, breakfast, or something and talk. But to just suddenly ask me to get into something with you and I don't even know you, I don't think that's right. I maintained my calm. And eventually he dropped me off in the Frederick State where I was heading to. And I said, I'm going to see you around. And that was that. I think sometimes, we have to learn how to stay calm in the midst of a storm. And I think that's why a lot of people run into problems. We panic. We tend to panic. And we lose track or we lose control of the situation when we panic. I recall another incident when I was in a classroom and the fumigators came around. They were fumigating the area, and as they came through the corridor and they sprayed, the fumes from what they were using came in beneath the door and into the classroom, and everybody panicked. They thought it was smoke, and people began rushing to the door. And again, I stayed calm in that situation, and then the professor, told us after they found out what was happening, he said, this is how people end up dying in certain situations. Because everybody ran to the door where there was a jam at the door so that people couldn't even get out. And so it's important that we maintain a sense of calm, that we take our time to evaluate things carefully before we make decisions. And so even in terms, this life is all about relationships. This life is all about relationships. The planets are in a relationship. sort of. The moon determines high and low tide upon the earth. So there is a gravitational relationship between the moon and the earth. There is a relationship between the sun and the earth. And so it's all about relationships. And we have to learn how to maintain relationships, to keep things in order, notwithstanding what may occasionally go off track. Occasionally, we're going to have storms. We're going to have hurricanes. We're going to have tornadoes. Occasionally, we're going to have eruptions of volcanoes. We're going to have nature just simply, getting out of whack, if I may. We have to learn to manage these things, to manage the risks that come with these things, to stay in control, stay in charge, be calm, be collected, and just know how to ride those situations. And so I'm saying that with relationships, that's how we have to do it. I don't know if you guys catch my drift or if you disagree with me, but that's my advice. And even in school today, I'm no longer in the classroom. Shanice, you're in the classroom. I don't know what you see in the classrooms today, but I can guarantee you that even when I was getting ready to leave the classroom, I saw things happening. Students being of a different mindset, not being afraid to show their orientation. So I'm certain that as you walk the corridors in schools today, you're seeing the children, the students who are of a different sexual orientation, and they're not afraid. We're seeing, those who find that they don't fit in, and we have to be accommodating. As a teacher, I would be accommodating if I was teaching in the schools today. So I don't know how you guys feel about that.
We could do like I say, judge, the ultimate judge is God Almighty. So you gotta ride the wave.
Shanice?
Yeah, okay, so there was so much information that you was given, but definitely stay calm. Staying calm helps you make a better thought out decision, which could making quick decisions could basically mean life or death. So taking a few extra minutes to think about a decision could make a big difference. And in the classroom, yes, even when I was in college over 10 years ago, they talked about, non-binary students, and, there's certain things that we're not supposed to do that I learned about in college. Now, coming into the workforce, it was a little bit different. It wasn't up until, I want to say, a year or two ago that my district was pushing for equity and equality, and under that umbrella, they covered gender equality and non-binary students. And, instead of saying boys line up here and girls line up here, you would say, if you have a red shirt, line up. If you have blue pants, line up. You definitely want to respect students because you want them to respect you in return. So that's a big thing. It's not your decision, how you feel has nothing to do with how they feel and what they are going through. And then sometimes also in the classroom can be the only safe space for that student to get to be who they want to be. They might not be able to express themselves in that way at home, but once they get away from the house and they're at school, that's their safe place to be who they feel like they need to be. And so I'm not saying to encourage it, but I'm also saying just let them be who they want to be. As long as they're not hurting themselves or hurting others, then it's fine. You can be whoever you want to be.
So, well, and again, because we have individual differences and preferences, I recommend that we show a measure of sensitivity when we deal with persons who are not of the same persuasion as we are. I recall situations when I was a student in high school where other students found out certain persons had an offensive odor, and they would be kind of like insulting to those persons. tell them that straight up, you stink. And I guess because I was raised by parents who were devout Christians and they instilled in me certain beliefs and practices, I always felt that it wasn't right, you know. And I've always tried to find a medium whereby I can accommodate persons. Even as a grown adult today, I found it difficult when you have a student in class who apparently is not sticking to the hygienic regimen, if I may. You got to find a way to talk to them. You got to find a way to bring it home to them that there is something called deodorant.
I would say so I have a story without giving out too much information. A few
Mhm.
years ago, there was a little boy at my school. And so, he would smell like he just used the bathroom on himself. And we were
Mhm.
wondering, and it wasn't a number one. And we were wondering, like, what is going on? It's not my job to say anything. First line of offense, report it to the social worker. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's a good thing that his teacher reported it to the social worker because under further investigation, he was being sexually abused by his
Wow,
uncle.
wow,
And
wow.
that is the reason why he would use the restroom on himself in hopes that his uncle did not touch him.
Oh wow, that was a mechanism to
Yes.
Wow, wow.
this.
So those situations are they're very difficult to deal with. But that's why the social worker is the first hand of defense.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mhm.
you know something isn't right. It's not, one day, okay, it's one day. Maybe they had an accident. 2 days, you're like, okay, something isn't right. What's going on? The third day, you're like, okay, let me report this to the social worker so they can begin to investigate what is going on. Even
Mhm.
today, I had a situation. I had to go to the social worker today in my classroom, in a kindergarten classroom, for someone who had an odor. And I'm like, this is not normal. This is not regular body odor. Something is going
Mm-hmm.
on. But once I realize what's going on, my paraprofessional who's in the classroom with me, I say, hey, do you notice something? Don't say anything, but do you notice something is off? She's like, yes, I noticed it. And so all I have to do is I reported it to the social worker, and then that was it. My job right there is done.
Mm-hmm.
I do not investigate anything, but I did my part just so something happens. They can say, well, the teacher reported it. She was aware that something wasn't right. She reported it. I reported it. I covered myself. Because that's another thing. You have to make sure that you cover yourself. In this day and age, people are so quick to sue. They are so quick. You can lose your license from any little thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Um,
so,
this is interesting because just this week, a former senator and a former police officer was convicted of first-degree sexual assault on a minor, a local guy from the territory who served as a police officer. He served as a senator, and he ran into some problems where he was expelled from the body, from the legislature. But eventually, he was charged with sexual assault of a minor in the state of Florida, in Jacksonville in particular. And he was just found guilty and possibly facing life in prison. But it was not just one victim that he allegedly messed with. There were a couple of other cases. One, a staffer at the legislature, and another one, a young woman whom he was apparently training in martial arts or something of this nature. And it is sad when you read of such developments, and you wonder what measures we have in place to protect the vulnerable, the young ones. I don't know what you guys have on the mainland in terms of making sure that students are protected and empowered to know how to identify those approaches, advances, behaviors that aren't welcomed, and what can be done about it. I am not aware that we have any proactive measures here in the territory to deal with that. And by the way, We just had a report on the schools, which doesn't sound very good here in the territory. So we do have challenges here in the territory. But I'd like to hear from you. What measures you have in your school district to put youngsters, youth, children on guard to know how to deal with approaches, advances, behavior that's just certainly not welcome, and to prevent bullying and such aggressive behavior.
So we do have a program, but before I get into that, it's kind of hard to get into that when the president was accused. Anyway, we'll get into that. We'll get into that later. Um, that's so we do have a program I know in my district under the SEL, social and emotional learning, and part of that curriculum is teaching kids about good touch and bad touch.
Mhm.
So good touch meaning high five or a handshake, and then there's bad touch about where people are not allowed to touch you unless you go see a doctor, unless your mom or dad is giving you a bath. Now, outside of the shower, nobody should be touching those areas, regardless if they are your mom and dad.
Mhm.
If you are going to the doctor, they're still like we go through so many things about that. And then there's also within that curriculum we talk about bullying, even as early as kindergarten. What is bullying? What does bullying look like? What is the difference between you being bullied and then somebody is just doing something to you one time?
Mhm.
Because that's when they learn how to tattle, and they start complaining. She's looking at me, she's bullying me. Well, baby, that's not bullying. They're just looking at you. They're allowed to look at you. So we
Mhm.
have a whole curriculum of things that we go through in order to help students differentiate, what is supposed to be happening and what is not supposed to be happening. When do you feel safe and what is unsafe? What do? You need to report it to a trusted adult. Okay, we tell them,
Mhm.
even if the person say they're gonna hurt you or hurt your family, you still need to report it.
Mhm. So,
So
so
we
in
cover
that,
all of that.
let me ask you, in that curriculum, because I
Mhm.
think you made an exception in terms of certain behaviors that would be acceptable coming from a mother or a father, a parent.
Mhm.
But then we also have parents who become abusive. We have
Right.
parents who molest children, sexually abuse them. So, how does the curriculum make for that? How is the line drawn that the student knows that, okay, well, here my dad has gone too far, or my mom has taken that step beyond what's acceptable.
Well, like I said, we stated in certain situations when these things should be happening. For
Mhm.
example, if you are in the shower, if you are taking a shower, your
Mhm.
mom or whoever is in charge is supposed to help you take a shower.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
just stuff like that. Other than them helping you take a shower, there shouldn't be any other situations where they're touching you in those areas. We call them like a bathing suit area. And
Mm.
then sometimes the kids even share those body parts, which I think is very important. We don't name those body parts in school, but as a parent myself of young kids, I stress that to my child. What is the correct name of
Mhm.
those body parts? Because if you go into the school and you're like, somebody is touching my cookie, well, they're touching your cookie. What is that? So what? you know? But if that child says, somebody is touching,
The
I don't,
the
I
part,
can't say that.
yeah,
Yes,
and already we know the part,
right,
yes.
right, right. Then you can differentiate. Okay, well, something isn't right here, and then you can also tell behavior. Behavior
Mhm.
is very important. It's important that we pay attention to our children. It's important that we pay attention to our students. Any person that you come in contact with, if they have been assaulted, their behavior changes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Even if it's not in a negative way where they become depressed, they may change differently. They might start seeking a different type of attention that they didn't seek before.
Mhm.
So it's important that people pay attention to those cues, what to look for. if you're around an adult and they're rubbing a child like their arm, they're a little close. We have trainings on all of those things because
Mhm.
it's a big thing. Unfortunately, I live in a state where sex trafficking is huge.
Wow.
And so we get trainings on those things. You know what to look for, how to
Mhm.
tell,
Mhm.
different signs within the kids, different signs within adults. You know,
Mhm.
that's part of being a mandatory reporter. We have to get trainings on all of these things in order to be able to tell when something isn't right.
Not to cut you short, but so I like to watch YouTube documentaries with the true crime and stuff like that. And I think one of the stories, this young Hispanic background little girl and her dad and the mom, they were separated, and she was going between the two homes. And you wouldn't believe the mom was abusing that little girl. And the unfortunate would happen to her. She was living with the dad, but unfortunately he got sick. Now, before he got sick and ended up he died from cancer. He was supposed to do paperwork for a cousin of his, some family member in Cuba or something to get custody of the girl, but that didn't work out. So she ended up being killed under the abuse of her mom. That was such a touching story to read. I said, wow. And the teachers at the school, they saw the little shifts in her behavior. When she was living with the dad, everything was A1. She was getting good grades, everything. When she was under the mom's care, getting abused, everything took a sour turn. She came school, she looked disorganized, like rumpled clothing, being antisocial. It was just a hot mess. I don't know how the judge ruled in favor. And the sad part about it is this mom, she had two other kids and she didn't abuse those kids.
Mm.
She took that abuse out on that little girl.
You know, and I don't know if our education department has such a curriculum in schools here. I don't think we have that. And this is very interesting. When you speak about the situation in a shower where a young child may need assistance, one of the allegations against the former senator who was just convicted is that he had one of the young victims, one in particular, join him in the shower on one occasion, and that happened. I think that's what happened in the state of Florida in Jacksonville. Now this girl must have been around 16, 16, 17 at the time when he had the girl join him in the shower. And it's unfortunate that these things happen, and we tend to think here in the Virgin Islands that everything is just so you know easygoing, and we don't have bad things happening to our children here in the territory. But actually, there are bad things happening, and for every case that we find out, what about the number of cases
That is
that's not known, not reported? And so I think it's incumbent upon us to have that kind of a curriculum that you refer to here in the territory, so the children can know um, uh, what avenues, what sources to turn to when they're faced with such situations. Um, I, I I know of so many cases here in the territory where things just went bad for children.
to me, that's like lifelong trauma to deal with being sexually abused, and you just cannot escape from your monster. Like that thing would drive me. I don't know. At some point, I think I would lose it, and somebody's gonna get hurt,
Mhm.
and it ain't gonna be me.
And
I'm gonna plan.
let me just say to those of you who are listening on radio, and even those of you following online, and you want to call and you know have some input, the number is 773-0390, 773-0490, and of course the area code is 340 if you want to call and share with us on this program. Um, you know, Shanice, you alluded to government officials. And before I even go to the government officials, the president, senators, and how they represent us, before I even go to that, one instruction given to children is that children must respect authority. And that becomes problematic sometimes. Children are asked to respect authority. Children are asked to obey their parents and to honor mother and father. At what point does a child say, I'm going to disobey? At what point you draw the line that you're not going to respect parents, you're going to disobey them, you're not going to honor them? And the honoring aspect is different because you dishonor your parents when you become delinquent in behavior. That's how you dishonor parents. When you begin to engage in delinquency. I've known of situations here, but I just read about a situation today where a young lady sneaks out of the house, jumps through a window to go gallivanting in the night, doing her thing. And I've known of cases here in the territory where children choose to do that, And, parents have a responsibility to ensure the child's safety and well-being. Parents also find themselves facing challenges when children are being disobedient and doing things contrary to procedure, accepted standards. And sometimes parents even resort to violence, hitting the child, and of course having to suffer consequences as a result of that. And that's why I maintain that in all situations we gotta stay calm, because desperation will cause you to make bad, dangerous decisions. That's why we have this program Choices, to try and steer people in the right direction. But where do we draw the line in terms of a child deciding, I'm not going to obey my parents? Any view on that?
So is that just
the young person who's listening to us, who's viewing this program? What do you say to them in terms of is there a point where you disobey, where you say, hey, hold it there, where you feel like smacking your father, or even cursing your mother, which you shouldn't do? Where is it? Where is that line drawn?
Where is the line drawn? Hello. First, that's difficult because the more you know, the better you do. So first you want to understand where's the behavior stemming from. Okay, is it just random, all of a sudden they're doing this, or was it leading up to this and you as a parent failed at correcting your child at a young age? So there's that aspect. And then there's, okay, all of a sudden my child was a good child, and then all of a sudden they're trying to hit me. Well, what is going on? Why are you trying to hit me? And I'm not saying you as a parent may not have all the tools to understand where your child is coming from. That is where you need to seek professional help, because sometimes you need a middleman. You're upset as a parent because your child is being defiant. Mm-hmm. And your child is upset and they don't know how to control their emotions, because at the end of the day, they are still a child. They don't know how to control their emotions. So you have to find somebody who is not biased to help mediate the situation and find out what is going on. It may not happen overnight. It may take some time, but that might help curb the behavior. That might help lead to what the root of the behavior is, or it might lead to a diagnosis of that child.
Let me just say to you two here with me, and those who are listening, that parents do cross the line. I had good parents, I had great grandparents, I had good parents. My father was a disciplinarian, But my father crossed the line, you know. My father crossed the line at times. My father was the president of a sports and cultural organization. I was coming from church with my father one Sunday morning. My father would allow me to drive the car. I didn't yet have a driver's license. I was 16, 17 at the time, but he would let me drive the car sometimes. And this young lady came talking to my father right in the churchyard and discussing an upcoming Christmas party. And the young lady asked me if I was coming to the party, and I said I didn't know. My father did not offer to buy me a ticket or anything like that, but the night of the party, friends of mine decided to crash the party. Now, my father had made a statement earlier on to so-called invaders, party crashers. He had made a statement that if you're not invited, if you didn't pay a ticket to be at a party, you should leave. I came in after he had made that statement. And when I got in there with my friends, of course, the guys who are in charge, knowing that my father is the president of the organization, I was offered a drink. And here I am with my friends, having my drink, and my father comes up to me and he says to me, you got to leave this place. Now, later on, I came to understand that him having asked party crashers to leave, he has to dish out the same thing to me, but I didn't know about that. He asked me to leave, and I did not leave. I was defiant because I felt bad. I felt humiliated in the presence of my friends. And I stayed and I said to myself, if this man touched me, I'm going to slam him with a bottle I had in my hand, you know. I had decided upon that, but he did not do anything. He allowed me to stay there. I stayed there for about a good half an hour before I left. With my friends, we left, you know. And then the next day, of course, he would deal with it. He went to my grandmother first of all to tell my grandmother what happened and how he felt like dealing with me, you know, at the scene. And then he spoke to my mother, and my mother called me and discussed it with me. And eventually, he had a talk with me. But I'm telling you guys, if my father had laid his hands on me that evening, it would have been a disaster. You know, thank God he didn't do it. So parents do cross the line. And children need to know how to handle parents who cross the line. Now, I know some people will say, well, you know, John Baptiste, you're wrong, you know. You should have respected your father's command in the first instance. He asked you to leave. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm being very candid and telling you guys exactly what transpired that evening. Thank God it didn't go a nasty route. But parents do cross the line. And I think when parents cross the line, children have a right. You know, that's my take. I don't know. You all may disagree with me, but that's how I feel about it. And I want people to know that, you know, I'm not going to pretend that I've been goody two shoes all along. I didn't make mistakes along the way. I made some mistakes. I might have had a poor judgment at times. But I like to share my experiences with other people so maybe they can learn from the shared experience. Even as we speak about odors, I just want to mention, any one of you listening to me, you can check a site called Ama's Healing Services. And I think they've got some wonderful products for both men and women, but they've got some things that some products that young females can read about, and it's good for maintaining good standards of hygiene. And it's Ama's with an A, Ama's Healing Services. You can just Google that and you'll see the stuff they have to offer, you know. And I think, you know, I share that. I share things with persons as far as health is concerned. There is a product I buy from a company called Let's Talk Health. I buy a product called Cardio Advantage, which I get from my wife because my wife has some cardio issues, if I may, with blood pressure. what that product is very good. It has something called EDTA in there, which removes plaque from the veins and arteries. And so I sometimes share these things with people so they can check out these products and see how the products may be of benefit to them. I think that, when we come to know of something that's beneficial, that's good, share with others. That's how I approach that. But anyway, to continue along what we were doing, and again, for those of you who want to call in and share with us, 773-0390, 773-0490. And of course, the area code is 340 for those outside of this jurisdiction. But we were talking about elected officials, the president. First of all, let me ask you guys something. When you look at the current president and the one before, President Biden and the current president, which one you would give a better grade to?
F for Donald Trump. That man is a mess.
I agree. I wouldn't give Biden an A.
Right.
I'll give him a C, maybe a C plus. But he was better than Donald Trump, especially as his morality as a human, just better respect for a human being.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that y'all President Trump is doing that is
Well,
just
you're talking about
you're
talking about what he's doing currently or what he did in the past?
Both. But now it's just like he's just pushing it to see how far they're gonna let him, and they're letting him go. He's like a dog that ran away.
Oh, you're talking about what he's doing domestically or in terms of foreign policy?
What he's doing domestically. Okay. There's a lot of things that people are not aware of. Thank God for TikTok. If it wasn't for TikTok, we wouldn't know all of the things that's happening across the country. What's happening in Chicago, the things that are happening in California, all the Democratic states. The military is in the Democratic states at this point. Like treason. Can we talk about that? What is going on?
So let me ask you. Well, we got two parties here, and as when you spoke about President Biden, who's Democrat, President Trump, who's a Republican. So we got a Republican Party, we got a Democrat Party. Which of the two parties you think best or better reflect the values of the electorate, the Democrats or the Republicans?
That's difficult, but I would say probably of course, the Republicans have the House, but as of right now, morality-wise, the Democrat needs to take charge of what is going on, which is difficult because they don't have as many electoral college votes as the Republicans right now. But the things the Republicans are trying to do, it's like, I don't understand. They're acting like majority of them are white, and they're acting like there isn't poor white people. They're acting like there isn't lower middle class white people who are going to be affected. You're telling me that you just don't have a heart. You're so evil that you're willing to sacrifice your family and friends because you don't want people to have abortions.
So then, all right. And I hear what you say when you speak of the pro-life issue. One of my problems with the Democratic Party is I find that they've sidestepped some of our traditional values. And that's a problem as far as I'm concerned. I find that the Republican agenda is more along conservative lines. I even go a little step further in terms of the history of the parties in terms of dealing with black folk in the United States. But here is my thing. I subscribe to conservative values. I'm not totally against abortions. I think there are situations where an abortion may be justified. I really do. But I'm against people just throwing aside the rules, living life loosely, being promiscuous, and then once they become pregnant, they want to have an abortion. I'm against that.
That's not our job to decide. That's God's job to decide. That goes the whole bias thing. That's not our job to decide how many abortions a woman should have. That's not. What about the men out here who are impregnating these women? We need to put more responsibility or change things, make birth control more accessible, make sex
Okay.
ed more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things play a part. You can't just say no abortions, we're cutting off abortions. No, we need to dive deep and look at the reason. Why are they having abortions? What is the problem? Do they not have money? If you can't take care of yourself, how could you take care of a child? Oh, well, that stems back. Why are you having kids? Oh, you grew up in a rural area, maybe. Okay, so now if you grew up in a rural area, I know your education isn't the best. You probably didn't receive the best sex ed education. So now you're just out here having kids and you don't understand what is going on. Or you don't have access to contraceptive. You don't have health insurance. That's another topic. There's so many factors. We can't just say, we can't go living according to how people used to live.
All right. Hello. Just a second there, Shanice. Hello, caller. Hello. Hello, caller. Good morning. Good evening. Hello. All right. I don't know.
Pick it up, see.
Hello, caller. Good evening. Hello, caller. Are you there? I don't know why we seem to be having some problems bringing the caller online. All right. Let's try this again. This is interesting.
Try it now.
Hello. 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 Yes. Hello. Caller. Good evening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, the young lady who talked about the former President Biden, she gave a C plus. What is a C plus?
She gave a C plus to President Biden.
That's what she said. What I'm asking for, I will throw in my question. So what is a C plus?
Shanice, did you hear that? What's a C plus?
A C plus is you're barely making it by. That's what that is. You're barely making it. Okay.
Caller, did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear it.
She says it's a C plus means that you're barely making it.
Then the better she give it in. For me, that's her opinion. I respect it, but I think she's better she give it in my head.
All right.
Because I don't think she was following here. If she was following it for 4 years in office and she's telling me she's going to give a C plus this almost a failure, then she wasn't following his track, and I won't like her to be a teacher. I won't like her to be a teacher at all.
So let me.
I live this program as much as I can. If she was following and understand what Mr. Biden do, we ahead of this. This is a gentleman with that card from Donald Trump, a failure, naturally a failure.
Okay, so you agree? So you agree that Donald Trump? You agree that Donald Trump is a failure, an absolute failure?
Yeah, he's a terrible failure. He's a failure.
Okay, all right.
He destroyed America. Donald didn't ups and downs, but he destroyed whatever ability we had as a nation. He behaved up here. And I'm saying she was really following former President Biden. She would have never made a statement, but in her opinion, I don't disagree with it.
All right, so let me ask. Before you go, let me ask you something. How do you think we got to the point where we can go from one president who is just about failing to one who is a complete total failure? How did the mindset of our people change to elect in such a fashion?
I didn't get that one complete failure, one failure.
Uh-huh.
What happened to it?
How did people come? How did people come? Because there were other choices presented to the people. We had other people who.
I don't know why we as a people will ever believe. I wanted her to win. Kamala ever win the presidency.
Mhm.
America doesn't want no woman in the highest position in this land. If they would like to get a woman, I don't see where Hillary to the lose. And Hillary as a white woman lost the presidency of the racial bias and things like that. Was a detrimental to our sister Kamala Harris.
Mhm.
It's not that, just natural racist.
Mhm.
So what this gentleman is doing, every black person that has a position and they respect the constitution and they fail to do what is not legal, the
Mhm.
attorney general fire them. So
Mhm.
it should not be any. There will never be a woman be a president. We were saying it was a black man. We passed that scene. But we
Mhm.
can afford to say there will not be a woman from president in the United States, whether black and white.
Mhm.
And for me, if Hillary didn't make it, I don't see nobody else making it.
Mhm.
I
Now
can
you
take it to listen. Like,
Mhm.
go ahead.
now you mentioned the race card or the racial element
Yes,
involved in the mix here. But
yes.
yeah, but so how do you explain the fact? Because it is a fact that we have people from the Eastern Caribbean islands who, notwithstanding what's going on right now in the Caribbean with military presence, military action, they're still supporting the president. How do you explain that?
I have to explain evaluation black and white. I won't be only the need to say it's only white people ration.
Mhm.
That black people ration too.
Mhm.
And we don't like ourselves.
Okay, all
And
right,
if you don't like yourself, if you don't like yourself, how are you going to love others?
all right.
Right here in same place.
Mhm.
And here we put people today, Republicans, to support what Trump is doing.
Mhm.
So I won't say that it's just white, it's black too. Of course.
Mhm.
Look in Miami. One set of people, black people. And you
Mhm.
can't, Democrats will never win in over there in presidency. They may get seat out here in the House or the Senate. When you come to the presidency, the only person who was fortunate to there was Obama. And it's then again, it's almost like a setup. Let
Mhm.
me change the system, give a black person, and get where we want to go. And it is it. Up to now, they cannot find one blemish of President Barack Obama for 8 years. And now he's setting threats after him. But then that will be the World War in America. If he only try to sanction and indict Obama, they really got a war inside of America itself.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I say that with a great heart and I mean it.
Mhm.
So right now, he's still trying to go after Obama.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
can with the White House.
Mhm.
Look what that man is doing with the White House. A secret honorable place.
Mhm.
He talking Obama had a basketball court in the White House. He don't know he gone, but because he had it there, and that might have been the area where he was, he wanted not want here, but he knocked it down. So,
Wow. Well,
so young lady, please check and see some research and see the accomplishment of Mr. Biden. And I hope next week when I put up on, I can hear you say, yeah, I'll give him even a bit. A big loss, but I see for me, a person that like politics for it is what I insult in my young sister made such a bold statement. But that is your position, that is your idea. Thank you.
all right. Thanks for calling and sharing. Stay strong. Keep the faith. All right. Yes, Shanice. Hello. Did we lose Shanice?
So,
Uh, it seems we lost you, Shanice. I'm gonna see if you can reconnect. You know, and
she's saying something, but I don't know what went wrong.
Josh, if you're around, let's see if you can help us get a reconnection with Janice. We seem to have lost the audio with her.
Oh yeah, I don't see her. Oh, she dropped down. We got her. We got her. She's ready for us. Boom.
All right, Janice. Yeah, well, you heard the gentleman. He disagrees with your evaluation of President Biden. Well, of course, you're a school teacher. I'm a former school teacher, and you know there were times when I was evaluated by my department chairperson and the assistant principal responsible, and I disagreed with the evaluation. So sometimes we evaluate. People disagree with how we evaluate. I'm certain that there were students who were not pleased with my evaluation, my grading of the papers. In fact, there were times when students came to me and wanted to contest the grade that I gave them, how I graded the paper. So it comes with the territory, especially when you're an educator. But clearly the gentleman does not agree with the valuation, but it is what it is. It is what it is. We got our hands full right now with who is in the White House. You know,
That man, he's a stress factor.
Mhm.
It's people like him who are making decisions, like the caller, who are making decisions based on how they feel and not what's necessarily the best for all people. Would you rather not have me in the classroom? Would you rather a racist in the classroom? And then he said something about racism. Black people cannot be racist. Racism is a systematic thing. Black people can be prejudiced, meaning you don't like other Black people, but racism is a systematic thing. Black people we do not have the power to be systematically racist.
Mhm.
So that's one. I don't know where he's getting this information from.
So let me ask you, when did racism enter the mix of human relations here on Earth? You have any idea?
Racism was in the Bible. It was
Yes.
it was labeled under classism back then.
Uh-huh.
But it's pretty much the same thing. You have
There
classism, you
was.
have colorism, all of that is not liking people because they are different from you. Being afraid that somebody who looks different from you is going to take over and mess up what you have going on.
Mhm.
Making
Well,
yourself seem superior to somebody who looks different than you.
mhm,
That's where it all stems from. Somebody wanting to be better than you. Jealousy.
mhm.
Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
It all goes
Yes.
back to that.
Well, Cain and Abel, they were brothers. So it was not a matter of racism there. It was a matter of a family
Jealousy.
dispute.
Jealousy.
There was
We don't.
jealousy.
They don't even give us the full story because if Cain was a planter and Abel was well, he had sheep, and one has to figure out that perhaps Abel's sheep went into Cain's pasture, not pasture, but his garden, ate his plants, and there might have been some kind of disagreement, a dispute between the two, and so Cain ended up killing Abel. As far as let me just say something, and here is my take. The Bible does make a question rhetorically asking, can the Ethiopian change the color of his skin? The Bible does make that statement. I think trying to indicate to us that you don't have no control over the color of your skin, no control over the texture of your hair. If you're created that way, that's who you are. That's how I see it. There was disagreement. There was how should I put it? Maybe some kind of discrimination between the Jews and the Samaritans. They were different spiritual persuasion, and so there was this kind of like discord. So much so that in one time the Messiah said to a woman, "It is not right to take children's meat and to give it to the dogs." Apparently, the reference to dogs here is Again, that's being applied to the Samaritan woman. But the Samaritan woman came back very strongly and said, yeah, you're right about that. But the dogs wait for the crumbs that fall off the table. And the Messiah was so moved by that, he said, I have not seen that kind of faith in Israel. You know, I mean, you just floored me with that response, that the dogs actually wait for the crumbs that fall off the table. And so he gave the woman her wish based upon that testimony, that expression of faith. So that when we look at the things in the Bible, and many have said that the Bible supported slavery, I agree that the Bible did give or provides guidelines in terms of how masters should treat slaves. I don't know if that's an actual authorization to go about having slaves. So I've got my disagreement with persons who claim that the Bible supports the institution of slavery. I believe that Europeans use the Bible as a means to enslave Africans because the Pope, in his wisdom, and don't get me wrong, people, in his wisdom or lack of wisdom, whatever it was, the Pope agreed that it was okay for Europeans to go into Africa and bring Africans out of Africa and into the New World under the pretext that they were going to be saved from sin and eternal damnation. Was that racism? Maybe it was. Was that foolishness on the part of the Pope? I think it was foolishness and downright ignorance on his part to say that. Maybe it even bordered on wickedness to some extent. But, you know, it is what it is. It happened. We went through the experience. Our ancestors went through the experience. And I tell people, look at the brighter side. Today, it's not true in America. We ain't get there yet as far as America is concerned. But throughout the Caribbean area, and to some extent in some of the Latin American countries, the descendants of the slaves are the ones who are in control. They are the ones who administer government. And so when you look at some countries where the people are still suffering, not being given the full privileges and benefits that they should be getting, is because it's their own kind doing it to them. And a white man. And a white man.
What?
Huh?
Did you just say that?
Yes, I did.
That's, oh man.
No, I'm serious, Shanice. Listener, the government in Barbados, the government in Jamaica, the government in Trinidad and Tobago, in all of the Caribbean islands, Antigua, St. Lucia, Dominica, all of them, these governments are run by African descendants. And so anytime you experience oppression, subjugation of people, denial of rights, injustice on the part of government in any of the Caribbean islands, it is your own type doing it to you, not white people doing it to you. And I
the oppressed becomes the oppressor.
Well,
if you don't know better, how can you do better?
At this point in time, Shanice, we should know better. We've been, listen, you look at the Caribbean area, the standard of education, and I would say that enlightenment is an aspect of education. And when you look at the standard of education in the Caribbean islands, the number of persons who have achieved and accomplished so much, I can take just the island where I was born, and I can see, you know, the vast improvement, the strides made along the educational front. You know, we are without excuse when we come up short, when we fail to provide the best of living experiences for our people. Right here in the Virgin Islands, yes, it is still a territory of the United States of America, and some people go as far as saying, well, we're a colony of the United States. But we have local control. It's our people who run the government here in the Virgin Islands. And so when we talk about oppression, when we talk about the populace, the people having no confidence in the election system, it isn't white America running the election system here in the territory. It's our own people.
Yeah. Corruption and lack of education. That's what it is.
Well, we got to be realistic about it. We've got a lady in Barbados. I mean, she comes out strong. I like to listen to her sometimes. We've got a few others. In the Caribbean area. I just saw a video where the Prime Minister of Jamaica was talking about how he perhaps misjudged the president of Burkina Faso, and he came out beautifully, explaining his error in judgment and why he should not have said what he said. Unless if AI was the one doing it, then pardon me. But if it came from the heart of the Prime Minister, it was good, well spoken, well thought out presentation. I still look at us in the Caribbean area, and I look at the situation in Haiti, and I'm saying we're still depending on folks from the European countries to come to the table and to help us resolve the crisis in Haiti. I think we have the wherewithal in the Caribbean area to come together and to bring the warring factions in Haiti to the table and to see how we can resolve the situation in Haiti. We've not taken the strides that we ought to take, the steps that we ought to take to effectively and efficiently contain the crisis in Haiti. That's my opinion. You know, I may get some backlash from it. I hope my Haitian brothers and sisters who reside here in the territory don't hold that against me. But I think that, you know, Caribbean governments have a role to play in that regard. And yes, we can rely on America, Canada, European countries to assist in terms of financing the reconstruction of Haiti. But when it comes to setting in place the action plan, you know, the principles whereby we can move forward to contain that, I think we in the Caribbean area, we have a lot to offer.
Haiti is part of the reason Haiti is in this predicament is because they trusted people from the outside to come in and help them. But instead of helping, people stole everything that they had. And that is part of the reason why Haiti is in the predicament that it's in. So they have, unfortunately, if it's going to take them having to figure it out, they have to figure it out and learn how to stand on their 2 feet before they accept any help from anybody else who's going to come in and steal everything that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's exactly what everybody has done to them, including the United States and Bill Gates and the Clintons and all of them going to Haiti, taking advantage of the people, knowing that they need help. And they're going over there and they're manipulating and stealing resources from that country, leaving them with nothing, to the point where now they're having an internal war. It has to be done. I'm sorry. We just need to wash our hands.
And we lost Shanice there, but let me just say, folks, she's on point, and that's documented. Shanice, that's documented in terms of, you know, the treasury in Haiti being plundered. You know, that's documented in terms of monies from Haiti that was paid to France for, what was it for again? You know, like sort of like wow, I can't get a term wrapped around my head wrapped around the term right now, but it's like they were paying France huge sums of money, you know, sort of like almost like a reparation type thing. And so these countries have exploited the Haitian people and the country of Haiti. And that's why I'm saying the Caribbean leaders who know better need to do better. They need to come to the table. They need to have a discussion about these matters. And they need to impress upon France and the United States of America their obligation in terms of giving back some more to the Haitian people and to the country, Haiti. That's all I'm saying. You know, the same way how some people are saying that European countries need to give us reparations for slavery. I'm saying bottom line, we need to do these things. There's nothing wrong in asking for that. You know, we can certainly move forward today without engaging in major conflict and you know, disharmony, if I may. We can do that. And so I impress upon Caribbean leaders to step up to the plate and let's do that. We've lost Shanice again, but let me hear this before we close. What's Irene trying to share with us? Oh, you're back, Shanice?
Yeah, she's been back.
We lost you for a while. I was saying that, man, we got powers that be who don't like to hear what you're saying, and they're trying to keep you silent. But I know you're informed. I know you're plugged in, and so do share with us. Let me.
No,
Wow.
so
Oh,
I was.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying that most Caribbean countries cannot help Haiti because they need to take care of home. The same thing with America. We're always trying to help other people, and the country is falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
St. Croix has no right to help anybody right now.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Barbados, Trinidad, they're going through their own thing. They cannot help Haiti.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me just share this quickly before we exit. That was just shared with me. France sent warships to Haiti's coast in 1825 and demanded a payment of 150 million gold francs in exchange for official recognition of Haiti's sovereignty. The justification: the payment was officially a form of compensation to the former French colonists for the loss of property, which included the formerly enslaved people who had won their freedom. And so Haiti was forced to pay France an indemnity to win France's recognition of its independence, a ransom demanded on the threat of invasion in 1825. All right, that's history. And we ought to, you know, recognize that history, but we've passed the time. Shanice, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it, you know, and I'll connect with you later so we can talk some more.
Thanks for having me.
All right,
Definitely, we'll see you again next week.
Oh, yes. Okay.
You were great.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You're welcome. So, folks, until next week, same time, same place, you stay safe, be blessed, give thanks and praises, and we'll reconnect then. Bye.
Good night.